Hello, everyone, and welcome back to CuppaJen. I would love to introduce our first guest of 2021, Erika Conway. Erika is a writer, director, producer, and certainly an actress. Her 25-year career has included acting in roles both on stage and in film and television, including Anne Frank in The Diary of Anne Frank, Beatrice in Much Ado About Nothing, Alma in Summer and Smoke, Mother in The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, and Dr. Lambert in Blackstone. She recently played Nyx in a new Canadian web series, Necessary Evil, which premiered at the Edmonton International Film Festival in 2018. She is the director of Tomatoes Tried to Kill Me, but Banjos Saved My Life. Later in the show, we will be joined by Keith Alessi, an ex-public company CEO and college professor. When Keith received a cancer diagnosis a few years ago, he turned first to the banjo and then to the stage for comfort. Encouraged by others to tell his story, Keith wrote Tomatoes Tried to Kill Me and has performed in 11 fringe festivals across Canada, the US, and the UK since 2018.
Hi. You scared me. What are you looking for? Nothing. It's not there. What? The emergency chocolate bar. I threw it out at the beginning of the week. Why would you do that? Because we decided to get back to healthy eating. We talked about this. Oh! I thought that was gonna be next week. No, it was not. Fine. What is that? Nothing. I'm just grabbing some fruit. Is that the cake sprinkles? Hand it over. Nope. Don't you even hand it. Give it to me. Oh, you little... Oh, get back here.
Hi, Erika.
Hi, Janessa.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm so happy to have you on the show.
I'm so excited to
This
be
has
here.
been a solid 6 months in the making, at least, at minimum.
Yeah.
We connected back last July already. Was it July or June?
Yeah, I think it was June or July. It was in the summer.
Which is
nuts.
wild. It's
Yeah.
wild to me because I feel like we've known each other our whole lives. Ooh, that's scary. Oh, that is
Soul
crazy.
sisters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, soul sisters for sure. It's been a hot 2020, a hot 6 months of or 7 really, because now we're in January of time, and I just can't get over how this year, last year went.
Yeah.
We did
It's
not
been kinda
think
crazy.
we would be here, but before we dive into that, what do you got to drink? Because it is CuppaJen, so you show me yours first.
Well, it's less of what's inside, which is very boring. It's just water today because I've caffeined myself out.
Good.
But this is my favorite mug. This is my
Okay.
power mug. I got it from my brother and sister-in-law, I think 2 or 3 Christmases ago. I eat out of it. I drink out of it.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
All the things. It's good.
Well, because it makes you feel super, as it should.
Right?
Yeah.
It's my power mug. It's my, coffee. I mean, the heat goes out real fast, but who cares? Because I look cool drinking it.
You look cool drinking it. I feel like we will probably end up talking about this on the show today, but being an Enneagram type 3 will really appreciate this mug. It says, be a goal digger.
Yes.
Which I feel like is very type 3. Even though I'm a 2, I lean definitely heavily 3, as we have discussed many times. And there is still coffee in it. So coffee, I just can't get enough of caffeine even in the afternoon these days.
It's a good legal drug.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll always push it, but that's a great mug. I love it.
I just was like, what can I get that's really Erika? Oh, this. Perfect.
That's awesome.
So, babe, okay, we've had a crazy year. Being an actor, being a producer, being a content creator, because that's kind of what things have turned into, as well as a writer, but just now with everything being online. What has this transition sort of taught you? I know we just like to go in real deep right away, but with everything shifting off of the stage, which is where you and I naturally come from, having such a high kind of peak right before the pandemic hits, what do you feel like are some lessons you took from 2020?
Whew, yeah, That's a big question.
Mm-hmm.
I did take a lot of lessons. It flipped around. I kind of felt like the beginning of last year was a year of transition for me. And in my mind, because we were coming up to this big tour that where we were heading into, and there was so many things in my career professionally and personally that were just opening and starting to flow and build momentum. I felt like transition was like the theme of my year. And transition it was. Not the one I wanted.
Not the way you thought at all.
No, man, a lot happened in a very short period of time. And I had to go inward and really reflect on a lot of things that I haven't taken a look at because I've been so busy. So a lot of what I've been learning is just, again, tapping back into my own creativity and my own authentic voice, which is really what I really thrive in terms of my creativity and what I want to draw out of other people as well. So it's been a hard but good personal year. You know, I feel like I'm much more clear about what I want to do, and I've gotten a lot of the clutter out of the way, and I understand myself better.
Yeah.
And how to pick myself up out of the ditch, because I've been in the ditch over and over again over these past several months. Like it's such a roller coaster, right?
Yes.
So it's just learning how to, if you spiral into it, how do you get out of it?
Yeah.
You know, and how do you, instead of looking at the wall that's coming for you, how do you lean in back into the lane so that you're not hitting the wall? And so that's really been a big lesson for me in terms of how to emotionally deal with everything. And in that, I feel like I've gotten closer to my own authentic voice.
Right. So obviously too, we've had many talks, so I know a little bit more than maybe our audience knows, but just for context, like your resiliency, what were some of the things that kind of were building up right before pandemic?
Well, before pandemic, I was in a show that I was a producer and director for called Tomatoes Tried to Kill Me, but Banjo Saved My Life. And Keith, who's part of the show, is going to join on afterwards. And that show had been touring for 2 years, and we were gearing up to tour for 2020. And we had a 10-city tour. We were heading to places like Brighton, to Edinburgh, Scotland, to a whole bunch of places in the States. I was working also alongside one of my very good friends, TJ Daw, and we were working on a writing project that was being written for a company in LA, and that was just awesome. So we were kind of gearing and flowing up with that. There was another project that I was doing as a director that was set to go on tour as well. So I just had all these great things that were happening and opening career-wise and creatively. And 2020 was like feeling like my year. And actually, I'm also a yoga teacher. And so yoga was taking off for me too. And I just was like, there was a whole bunch of doors opening for me teaching. And I love teaching yoga. So it just felt like everything was just kind of coming together. And it was a weird feeling, because you are just building momentum, and then it just changes in a heartbeat. So that's kind of where we were going. And so the fall from there, and the journey of kind of going through like what's going on and going through the 5 stages of grief, literally in a short period of time trying to figure out what's going on. I mean, it certainly was, it was devastating. And you see your friends and people who are in the theater community, in the shows around you, going through the same sort of thing, and everyone's just got this heaviness and this weight on them. And so that's sort of where we were going, and there was that excitement behind it. So the fall from that was really tough.
Yeah, because it went like, because of the momentum, you were already higher, and then it's like crash. Further to go down from being higher, and just feeling like things are at their peak in a way, like they're starting to, tumble together doing the show. But I know as well, like you and Keith, who will be joining us, had a lot of opportunities you already had gone to some places and you were going to more, and like just to stop so abruptly too, with no no foresight of seeing it coming at all.
Yeah, and it's, you know what, that's part of the lesson too, isn't it?
Mhm.
Because you think you have all this control over
Yeah.
things, and and it's such a good feeling to have control. And then
Yeah.
you realize you have no control. Like that
Yeah.
there's literally a teeny tiny little microscopic bug change the world in a matter of, a few weeks.
Yeah.
And so it just makes you realize how little controls you sometimes have over some things, like that. And so it's that's been a real, it's a humbling experience.
Yeah.
Is the best way to put it.
It's the best way. It's the kindest way to put it.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of swear words involved in the other way.
Yeah, yeah, we could say that. So what is it like then at that point to lose control and to like how to handle that emotionally in a way where you didn't go out and murder like 50 people? You know what I mean? Like in a way where you could try to handle things. Like what were some of the things that you've done and are doing?
Yeah. Counseling's one of them, honestly. That's been really helpful. It's just something that I believe in and has helped me in different times of my life. And so just reaching out to somebody who's kind of a third party,
Right.
it just helps to ground me in a certain way. Staying connected with friends always, and the people who really know you, the people who are your people, that will always have your back no matter what you're going through, that have seen the ugly side of you and still love you in the end. I think it's important to be able to feel all the feelings. So for me, that's part of been the creativity that I've discovered actually in this past little while, is giving myself some allowance to feel those feelings that I don't like to feel, and then transform them. And I find comedy does that a lot for me. Comedy, seeing things through the comedy prism, has always helped me deal with stuff. I have several friends who say the same thing, that are artists, and comedy is such a huge part of my upbringing and has been part of me dealing with a lot of things in my life. And so I'm so grateful for that. Exercise, oh my gosh, I don't know what I would do. I started running, and I've always kind of run, but not like committed runs. So I started running, and I've been running for the past 6-7 months pretty consistently. And so that just helps me to get stuff out of the way, and I don't know, just kind of gets you back to you. And and also just kind of coming back to some real truths, and foundational truths. For me, a lot of that's spirituality. That's my version of God, is coming back to those very real truths that you're not alone, that there's something bigger, that your what may seem like is a complete disaster might actually be a gift. And so I started to look at things, and the biggest thing I would say that has been the most incredible change, it's changed everything, it's been a total game changer for me, is gratitude. And I've always been a pretty grateful person, but I mean, like, working at it like a muscle, like working at looking at things from my past, things in my present, and things that I want to do, and just attaching full gratitude to it. It has really helped me perceive a lot of the things I thought were real challenges as something different. So that's been a game changer for me. It's just helped shift my perspective in so many ways. And I now, like, it's an incorporated thing that I do every day. As part of, like, almost like an exercise, I have to do that thing because it just shifts my perspective and gets me ready mentally for the day.
Yeah, I think that's like huge. I see where I always struggle, I'll be honest, is like, I think there's that careful line for myself between, because I am just inherently, and people who know me will just laugh, but I am a fixer. So I'm a person who will, if you come to me and you say like, Janessa, I'm just really struggling with A, B, and C, I will be like, okay, this is what you do for A. Here's B. I can help you with C. We'll do this. We'll work it out. We'll make it happen. And it's an ambition thing. It's a go-getter thing or a goal-getter thing. But there's also like a level where I have had to teach myself, and I know that you and I have shared some of this journey as well, about just letting things be messy and holding on to that. So how do you find that balance? Because some people will just stamp a positivity kind of bow on something and then be fine. But that's not exactly what you're saying, though. You're saying like an actual lens of like, okay, hold on, let's let it be messy, but let's also have perspective. Yeah. Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't know that I believe in positive thinking so much as like really just shifting the lens at which I'm looking through things, because I can look at my past, which has been tumultuous, and look at it through the lens of, if only it had been different, I would be in a different place. Or I can look at it like, that's actually what made me who I am and why I can be here doing the things I'm doing. And so I guess it's just shifting that perspective. And I don't always do it. In fact, my default isn't that. I have to work hard at building that muscle all the time. So, if I get myself into that sort of spin, that we talk about, my default's always negative. My default's going to be like, oh my gosh, everything's over. I have to work at getting out of the spin.
Like a thought pattern. You almost love a lie. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, because it's a narrative you've played in your head for years. Like, totally. I don't know. Like, nobody's going to love me unless they need me.
Exactly.
Something like that. I don't know. It's like, and it's like, that's not actually accurate, but that's a narrative that for toxic reasons at times I've played in my life. Or do you find you're rewiring thought patterns? Like, what are some of those things from your past? Like, if you feel comfortable sharing any examples of like, this was something I had to like actively go, hold on, let's work against it. You know what I mean? Rewire it.
Yeah. I definitely have a lot of those things, but
me too.
Man, this is
sorry, babe. Sorry,
lots of them.
Choose your favorite worst one.
Okay. Actually, I do have one, and it's foundational for me. And the foundational belief is that if I show myself vulnerably, like all the messy stuff, all the stuff that I think is ugly and a mess and crazy and whatever, if I show people that, then I fundamentally believe that they won't want to be around me.
Yeah.
And that's the truth that I hold on to. And in fact, I believe that part of the career that I built as an actor kind of was a bit born out of that. And I had a passion for acting. I've always loved it. I will always love it. It's a part of who I am. But I think part of that career was born out of that belief, because I needed so desperately to be seen and heard to make up for the feeling of, I wanted to show the world that I could be put together and be Superwoman, be powerful. And and I get to wear that shield and that cloak of a character. And people loved it, and I had these great audiences, and I got these great roles, and I was actually really successful, but on some level I was really unhappy. And it was never enough, is the bottom line. It was just never enough, right? And so it's just been a journey of coming over to another side where I do believe being in the middle and allowing it to be messy and allowing you to be in process and to have these feelings to be okay. And the difference is not staying there, I guess. Maybe that's the difference for me now than before. As an artist, there's this part of me that wants to be like, I like this feeling. I just want to have a bath, drink a bottle of wine to myself, put on some sad music, and cry all day. And there's something, and sometimes you need to do that. Like, don't get me wrong. Sometimes you need those days, but I find it's not helpful most of the time to actually what I want to do. So I just try not to stay there, but just really, I really, where I feel like I'm going is being able to have the ability to reveal myself and my
Yeah.
truth authentically with the mess. It doesn't mean I show everybody all my,
Yeah.
inside stuff necessarily, but that vulnerability, having that level of vulnerability is not something I carried with me in my acting career before. I was too busy putting something on and
Ah,
wearing a cape on my back
yeah. Yeah,
to
yeah,
prove
yeah.
something, right? If
Yeah.
that makes any sense.
No, it absolutely does. And it's funny as you talk, I'm just like, even though we've sort of talked about these things before, I'm wondering if we share a wound in a way because I have felt like these words it's a little, it manifests differently, but in the way that you're superwoman, I've been spoken over in the past, like, Janessa, I feel like you have a little bit of a savior complex. I don't know, like when it's you, I'll be so, oh, Erika, like you got to give yourself grace. Like this is how it works. And like I could talk to you all day with honestly in my heart, the most genuine, pure love. But then it's like weird. Then 90% of the time I can talk to myself like that, but something kind of messy happens or emotional or some kind of trauma response or trigger. And it's just like everything I've taught myself in yoga is gone. There's no deep breaths. You know what I mean? There's no breathing in love. Like, and like everything that I like read in scripture, thrown out the window, like it's just gone. This is where I do feel that gratitude, grace, and process, and having friends like yourself speak to me like, hey, it's okay. Like, you know what I mean? It's one step at a time and not everything has to be, perfect. But it is hard when that comes from deep in the past. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. It's a weird thing about perfectionism. Like I think that there's a little bit of perfectionism in what you're talking about. And it's
Yeah.
just like, man, there's no grace in perfectionism. There isn't.
Yeah.
And I thought perfectionism was about excellence. I
Yes.
don't think that it is anymore. I think that
Huh.
you can want to have excellence, and I think that's a great thing. And for achievers, you can't take that away from them. You can't.
Yes.
It's part of who we are. We want to be
Right.
excellent. We want to be the best. We're always going to want those things.
Mhm.
And so there's a bit of competition that comes with that. I don't think that's unhealthy, but
Right.
perfectionism is different. Perfectionism is like perfectionism's fear ultimately, but
Wow.
it
Yeah.
doesn't, I just don't think it has room for grace, and it doesn't have room for holding space for messiness. And actually some of the best art
Yeah.
that I have seen from myself and from my peers has come out of or in the middle of a freaking mess, man.
Yeah.
I think grace is allowing that vulnerability, but we
Mhm.
have to somehow get to a place of trusting that we're going to be
Surrender.
yeah, surrender, right? Like it's,
Surrender.
some people aren't going to accept you. That's a reality. That's
Yeah.
the truth. I might put my stuff out there. It's the thing is, if I'm an actor on stage and I do a show and people don't like it, it hurts my ego for
Yeah.
sure. But it doesn't hurt nearly as much as if I were to put my heart and soul on the stage and people didn't like it. Oh my
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
that's way
Yeah.
more of a risk.
Yeah.
So whether you do it on stage or whether you just do it with a person, it's so much more risky to crack yourself open like that. And with that involves the messy bits, because you can't, you don't get to pick and choose. You can crack that open and
Yeah.
you get the really good stuff, but then you also get all the crap. It just,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And okay, here's a question that I don't necessarily know the answer to because I agree that perfectionism is ultimately a fear. The question is, what do we think it's a fear of?
It's a great question. I don't know exactly. I think for me,
Mhm.
it's a fear of just it comes down to that day old thing of fear of not being enough, because
Okay.
perfectionism, to me, is I have to show you, I have to hustle for something, I have to prove to
Ah,
you.
yeah.
There's like those kinds of words attached to it. I gotta show you that I'm good enough so that you'll love me. I gotta
Yes.
prove to you that I can work hard enough so that you'll love me. I like it always comes back down to that self-worth thing.
Yeah.
I guess it's like it's just a question of where does your worth come from?
Yeah.
Where does, and it's different for everyone. And answering
Mhm.
that, I know when I'm really struggling and I'm comparing myself to everybody else, where my worth is coming from in that moment.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be doing something that's working and hustling to try to get it back, to get my worth back. Like I'm not already worth something as it is just by being here. Like, and
Yeah.
that's part of that mental foundational switch. And I think that's where the God factor comes in for me, is just,
Yeah.
that's where my worth comes from. And as
Yes.
opposed to
Right.
from the outside in, it's got to come from the inside out. Much easier said than done. I know that
Definitely.
cognitively. To put that into practice, man, I mean, I'm still trying. This has been a
Yeah.
journey for me that I've just kind of woken up to about maybe about 5
I
years
love
ago.
your wording. I'm still trying, which is like so classic us to be like still hustling.
Yeah, I'm still hustling. I do. I do. It's really, and you see yourself hustling and you're like, why am I doing that? I know better.
Yes.
You know? And so what's frustrating to me, I think sometimes in that situation, is just like, why does it take so long to learn these lessons? Like, why can't it be like in school? You figure it out, you figure out the game, you do the test, you move on. Some things are like that. Some things are like that. But some of these lessons, man, I feel like are probably going to be ones that I will be dealing with always on some level. And I definitely have an awareness that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it any easier. If anything, it makes it harder in some way.
Exactly. And I think about a year like 2020 and I think about, oh, look at those trust issues. Like, wow. And like a lot of them with God. Quite frankly, sorry, you let, like, yes, you have a plan. I understand you have a plan. Where is it? I don't see it all the time, you know? And like just learning to be like, breathe, let it be enough, not needing that validation for the ego, just knowing and trusting you're enough, just knowing and trusting that he has something sorted for you, which I think will be amazing to talk to Keith about, because he's got that story too. But like,
well, and it's really, and that's really what, I mean, being a part of this project that I've been with most recently, that in and of itself has been such an incredible, hard, wonderful journey, because so much of that has been about learning to surrender a lot of stuff. And really Keith's story, which I know he'll share a little bit, his story to get him on stage in the first place is incredible. But then there's the story of the show, really, for the past few years, and there's so much that's come out of it. And you know, the one thing that I've learned, I've been so grateful to be part of this project and kind of walk alongside it from the very get-go, is just being able to see how things have unfolded. It's taught me an enormous amount about letting go. And just when you think you've got things in a box, the way I feel like God puts things together is something I could never have done. There's just no way I could have put those pieces together. And so it's a reminder to me that even though to me, in my perspective, I see it as being like, why is this happening? You are ruining my life. Like, I feel like a teenage kid, right? You're ruining my life. Slam.
Totally.
But really, like, I just think there's that perspective that we just simply don't have. And there's so many pieces involved in making that happen. And I've watched time and time again with this show, so many things, just the right people at the right time with the right words or the right thing. Like, and Keith will probably talk a bit about that too. It's been incredible. So it's been such a lesson for me of holding things lightly. And I learned that I'm a bit of a control freak, a big control freak, let's be honest. Not a bit.
Cheers, honey. It's okay.
Exactly. Let's be true here. And so, but that's been the biggest thing that's come out of my journey of the past 2 years with this project. And it's really, man, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's been a beautiful and very hard and very wonderful ride. It'll be interesting to see where it goes too.
Hi, I'm Keith, and I'm a recovering executive. There's just something about the banjo. I wanted to learn how to play that three-finger style that Earl Scruggs played, and I ran out and I get my first inexpensive banjo. The banjo player will play for $1. We'll stop for 5. Monday morning, I walked into my office in Edmonton and I quit that CEO job to go all in on my banjo dreams. 13 days later, I was told I had a 50% chance of living a year.
Hi, friend.
There we go. It says connecting to
Oh,
audio.
it's connecting to audio. We live in this Zoom world now. Where are you coming to us from, Keith?
Virginia.
Virginia. And you have your cup. Yes. What's in it, friend?
Some sort of generic coffee. I don't know.
Yeah.
Store bought.
Store-bought coffee. Okay. Well, you know what? We all need to survive somehow, don't we? What time is it there to be having coffee?
It's about 8 o'clock tonight, right? Yep.
You are a man after my heart. I love that so much. Oh, thank you so much for being here. You guys, first of all, I saw the show. Congratulations. I know you've been doing the show for a while, and it's probably actually felt like you haven't done the show in a while in another sense, but getting to see, wow, that piece of art was just so, first of all, so fun, so charming, but so deep for me. Like, to just talk about, like, the issues of letting go and surrender, and Keith finding something so much greater than yourself. I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about, because I want people to see this show, a little bit about the process of creating it.
Well, I never set out to take to the stage as a pursuit.
Yes.
Um, I had this lifelong passion for banjos, and I tried to learn to play them. I'd taken lessons, I'd watched the videos, and nothing worked. So I needed the accountability of having to get to learn to play.
Yes.
So I came up with this scheme that said, well, if I perform it in public, I'll have to learn how to play. So I
Yes.
started writing this show anticipating that if I got accepted into a fringe festival or two, it would force me and make me accountable, and I'd have to learn to play. But I
Yeah.
literally wrote the show in about 3 days. When I
Okay. Wow.
Well, when I decided to do this, I contacted Erika.
Mhm.
I knew she had connections to the theater. I said, well, what do I do? And she said, well, just write it all down. So the first pass was like 2 hours of material. I
Yeah.
just I just did a dump, you know. I
Yeah.
said,
Free form. Yeah.
and of course I'm an accountant by training, so it was all very linear.
Yeah.
And started at the beginning and ended at the end. And Erika looked at it and said, well, you've told me a lot about what you did, but you didn't tell me why you did it.
Yes. Okay.
That started a process of really digging deeper. And it's been a journey. I mean, the show you saw was probably one of the more recent versions of it,
Mhm.
but it's never the same twice in a row because I'm always finding more stuff as I dig deeper. And
Yeah.
I talk about the universe.
Yeah.
Uh, if people are spiritual or religious, you might call it whatever you'd like. I mean,
God. Yeah. It's
yeah,
okay.
I had, I'm Catholic and was
Yes.
raised in a traditional Catholic church. And,
Yeah.
there's certainly a force moving behind the scenes there because the words just came.
Yeah.
And virtually every important moment in the show just showed up.
Yeah.
The line just came to me. Even the title was one I was just talking to my daughter, and I said to her, tomatoes tried to kill me, which they literally did.
Yes. Which I didn't know before seeing it. I was like, oh, it's a metaphor. No, it's literal. It's amazing.
It's both. It's both.
It's both, but I know.
It started out literal, and then the metaphor came out, and it was a metaphor for my life. And so the tomato represent the acidic tomato, but they also represented the life I was born into an Italian household.
Yeah.
And the banjos were physical banjos, of course.
Yeah.
But they also represented a life I chose for myself versus the one I was born into.
Yeah.
So process just, I'm not going to say that the clouds parted and the light came down and
Sure. Yeah, the Red Sea part. Yeah, totally.
I didn't come down from the mount with tablets, but
Right, not quite that Moses style, but
I can't really pinpoint the inspiration to the process. I mean, I set out to write it,
mm-hmm.
but the words just flowed. And now the product you have seen is the finished product. It didn't start out like that.
Yes.
Uh, we started out in Toronto in 2018, and the first show there were like 20 people in the audience. 3 of them were reviewers, and they all panned the show. They didn't like it.
Yeah.
At that point, they said, well, it was too much like a TED Talk, which is, of course, the world I had come out of, business, being
Mm-hmm.
and I had taught, so I was used to getting in front of a group and really more lecturing.
Yeah.
As the process went on, by the time we'd made it to Edmonton and then to Vancouver that first year, I started flipping it from less of me talking and more of me thinking about I'm just talking to one person here and I'm going to tell them my
Sure.
story. When it became a personal dialogue, then the thing caught fire, and 2019 was just an incredibly magical year for us.
Yeah. And Erica, how did you kind of I think it's Flannery O'Connor maybe who some great writer talks about like looking for the veins of gold. You find the kind of magic in something. How did you pinpoint like, okay, Keith, let's keep that part?
Early on in the process, we started to really kind of get to the heart of the story. But after Keith had done it and put it up, part of it was the audience reaction. The more that he started to really allow himself to be vulnerable, that was the gold, that was the veins, right? And so it was easy to pick out because for 2 reasons. It's easy to pick out because it hits you personally, and I was able to see the show quite a bit, but you see how it's also affecting the audience.
Yeah.
And so when you get that, what we would often do is then go back, and after every show, we would go back and do sort of a technical, if you stay still in this moment and not move, it will allow people to be drawn in more to what you're saying. So we use some technical things to get to the heart of it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love me the banjo. It and I have a lot in common. You'd expect to find a sound hole on this instrument here. It's up here. You'd expect to find my stomach down here. But as a result of the hiatal esophagectomy I received, in which they remove your esophagus, my stomach is now here. Notice the symmetry. I have a little itty bitty chest stomach. Life is interesting with a little itty bitty chest stomach. You gotta eat small meals. You gotta sleep sitting up, but it certainly beats the alternative. It also gave me a superpower. If I'm walking around downtown here tonight and somebody goes to mug me and punch me in the stomach, they're gonna miss. Banjo man.
Keith, I think my favorite moment of the show is actually just a joke you made, which where you talk about being like the banjo and the stomach being like up here and having the hole in the banjo up here. I thought it was hilarious, first of all, but it was like so funny that the moment that really stuck with me was you talking about somebody like giving you a punch to the gut and missing. Is that something you tend to do anyway, like as you're talking about a heavy topic like cancer and like how you survive that?
Well, those were the tricky waters we had to navigate when we started this. In fact, the first year we didn't even talk about what the show really was. And the title made people think, oh, this is going to be kind of comical.
Yeah.
But because we were dealing with such a heavy subject matter, the intent was always lighten it up everywhere you can. So at no point do I really take people to a very depressing spot without bringing them out of it pretty quick. So my natural tendency is to kind of use humor to drive home a point anyway. But I felt I felt it was pretty important. But you talk about those gold veins, veins of gold.
Hmm.
Erica really was on to those long before I was.
Yeah,
And I
curating.
wrote, yeah, well, when I wrote the first script, um, I did a preview show in Chicago at an art
Mhm.
gallery there. I had about 60 people there for the first show. And throughout this thing, I thought it's really about the music, and I was worried about the music, and I wasn't as good as I wanted to be. And she kept saying, "No, it's the story, it's the story, it's the story." And at that first show, there were two young men sitting in the first row,
Mhm.
and they were crying through the whole show. And at the end of the show, they came up to me. I didn't
Mhm.
know these two kids. They had come from a friend of mine had sent his daughter and said, "Bring Keith some people. He needs butts and seats because he hasn't learned to navigate the stage yet." And
Yeah.
these two guys come up to me and they say, "We didn't know why we were coming here tonight. We came because we were offered free pizza." I guess that was the
Yes, absolutely. That's how you get people to the theater for sure.
yeah, and they said, "We didn't know what we were coming to see. We lost our father to brain cancer 2 years ago.
Mm.
He was a banjo player.
No.
We hadn't heard a banjo in 2 years." So,
Wow.
and they said, "Keith, your energy is his energy.
Hmm.
So we feel like we were brought here tonight for a reason." So they're crying, I'm crying, we're all having this group hug. And I
Yeah.
walked out there, I got on the phone to Eric, and I said, "Okay, I get it now." You know,
Yeah.
it was like,
Yes.
and this just keeps happening.
Yeah.
Throughout this journey, people show up at this show because they're supposed to be there. And we have people coming back and they bring, I can't tell you how many times I've heard, "I know a friend who's got to hear this. I
Yeah.
know somebody else who needs this." And it just keeps happening. And it's gotten to the point. I mean, it gives you goosebumps every time, but it's gotten to the point. It's just like, yeah, okay, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. We know. We know. Somebody needs it. It's fine.
The comment we make every night is, somebody out there needs to hear this story tonight.
Yeah.
We don't know who, we don't know
Yeah.
why. You know, I did a show here on Facebook at the Floyd Country Store about, I don't know, a month ago or so. And because
Mhm.
the venue wasn't open, there were only like 8, 10 people in the place because of social distancing. Two of the people who were there were just customers of the store who were wandering around. And they said, "Well, can we hang around?" And the owner said, "Sure." Well, sure enough, the woman had, medical condition.
Yeah.
She was struggling. She was depressed. And the first comment she made to me was, "I needed to hear this story tonight." And it was like, it makes sense. There's only like 8 people here,
There's
but
8 people for sure. At least one needed it tonight. But see, like, and I love that so much because, of course, I am very strong faith believer in Jesus and people being brought together for specific purposes and reasons. But it's so interesting how you talk about, because I know that cancer, like, people hear that word and it can be such a hot button thing. It can really, just the word can trigger people. And this past year alone, I understood that at a different level because my dad got prostate cancer, and it's just now I hear the word differently. And so obviously it's not been to the same extent, and he's totally fine, so everything's good. But hearing that word can really trigger people. And so to at the same time, with what you describe in the show about the banjos and about music and my personal understanding of art and how I feel like God can use art to touch people and build connection. And there's some kind of, like, people have talked about it for years, all sort of faith traditions, the muse, what that looks like, what that inspiration, where does it come from? Where does creativity kind of originate? How does it connect to people? And yet you have two people sit in the front row who just happen to like, and banjo, it's not like, you talk about Mumford and Sons in the show, which is hilarious, but it's not the most common instrument. And for somebody to sit in that front row and just be like, what? Why was this show built for me? Personally, just me, you know? And it's cool that you describe that you almost started to make the show about one person, like you're having a conversation with one person, because I believe that that's how I received it. Even, of course, I am the only one literally on, now with the new formats of watching it not in a theater, but on my computer. I was quite literally the only one here, but it felt personal like that. I'm like, oh, I know Tulio. Like, it just feels like everybody you're talking about was like sort of like my story and I could understand it. And so, yeah, I really hope people see this show, because as much as it could be a triggering for some, it could also very much be a healing. And obviously you guys have seen that.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned faith.
Hmm.
I went out of my way not to talk about my faith in the show.
Hmm.
And the reason being, there's a large number of people out there, the minute you go there,
Yep,
they tune out.
absolutely. Yeah.
But here's a little behind the scenes. Um, I had been very active in supporting not only the Catholic Church, but Catholic education,
Yeah.
and literally an entire order of priests in Chicago who practice the old Latin Mass.
Okay.
Well, when I got diagnosed, I had a whole rectory full of priests praying for me. I probably had 10 prayer circles. I'm guessing somewhere on the order of 10,000 people based
Wow.
on the people I know and who they are and who they can reach.
Yeah.
Um, I don't for a moment believe um, my being here today and me telling this story is merely happenstance and good genetics and
Yeah.
great medical professionals. All those things certainly played into it.
Of course.
But there's a very strong spiritual message to the show for
Mhm.
those who recognize it.
Yeah.
And I drop hints along the way,
Hmm.
and I talk about the universe,
Yeah.
but those who believe know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I was very careful not to touch that third rail. I went out of my way to just deliver my story and leave it for people to fill in the blanks about it.
Right.
Because I get asked about it a lot after shows.
Yeah.
People ask me, "Did you believe faith had a
Component.
role in here?"
Yeah.
And yeah, and then once they open up the topic, I'm more than happy to talk openly about it. But
Right.
I didn't want to turn people off.
Well, and I understand that, because you're trying to create safety for people, because it's a very different thing if they come to you, because similarly with cancer, right? Like certain people might be like, I just, no matter who you are, lovely person, I can't talk about it because I will just become a puddle of tears right now. And, but the fact that somebody can feel safe enough to come to you and have that connection, that's a really beautiful thing within itself. But I agree that just from watching the show, you really understand, like, even just when you consider that the entire journey is quite literally a fight for life, and what that could mean, the implications of that being a gift and the gratitude you had. And like, not that you sugarcoated anything, but just that, yeah, it was hard, but you want to live, like you want to be here. And I think the implication of that, and that sort of just fight, but also reverence maybe for what life is and what it offers, especially in a time when so many people have been, sick or are worried about that. And it's a very different kind of thing, obviously, than cancer, but it's just a really beautiful message that I think can bring a lot of healing. Plus, again, the added bonus of, for me, you're promoting the arts. Like inherently by saying you love the banjo, it's like we get like that the art sort of, there's something spiritual about that aspect, which I've always tapped into. And whether other people want to, in the arts community, acknowledge that or not, or what they want to call it, I understand for safety reasons people have their views. But I think most artists would know, like, okay, there's some kind of muse or inspiration or something that they can't really explain,
Well, what I found interesting in the process too is I've certainly had to reflect a lot. And I've done a lot of things in my life, and I've been on some pretty big stages long before I found myself with this show. But it's really forced me to think about and reflect upon what is my true mission. And this show
Yeah.
has almost become an evangelical pursuit, not
Yes.
in a literal religious way, but I just feel like I have to keep putting this out there because of the effect it's having on people. My favorite night was in Winnipeg. I had a theater of 110 people. I got 75 hugs out of an audience of 110. I mean, that's probably never going to happen again. You got
Right.
to distance, but there a lot of people were very expressive, and so there'd be the very overt people who just come up, give me a hug, thank me, this and that. But then there was always a person or two who would just stand 6, 8 feet away.
Mhm.
You could tell you'd gotten to them. They'd have a tear in their eye, and they just kind of nod at you and leave. That there was a story there, but you didn't hear it. And
Yeah.
but if you read my emails and the social media stuff that people reach out, it's been a heck of a ride, and I'm
Mhm.
not sure where this goes in 2021. Keeping fingers crossed.
Yeah.
We have a schedule, but who knows what that's going to look like? And theaters are going to probably be 25% capacity.
I'm just interested too, because if God is, the one who puts two specific people in the front row of something, where my brain goes to is like, there is something unique about being, say, at like the Fringe Festival in a different country, though you're not there, to have the show be seen online, like what kind of reach that potentially could have and who's going to hear it and what that's going to mean to them. But it is difficult, I know, to not be there in person.
You've been listening in on my phone conversation. Well, actually, my text. I texted Erika last night. I said, "How bizarre is this? I'm sitting in Southwest Virginia, and people in Scotland are watching my show. I mean, that just seemed. And
It's,
actually, it could be worldwide, right? Because
yeah.
just 'cause it's in Scotland, it's on the internet. Once it's on the internet, people could be anywhere.
Yeah. You didn't know, obviously, when you started this show in like what, 2018? You had no idea that 2020 was coming.
No.
No, but like the message, because of how deep it is still very potent now, if not more so.
The isolation of COVID and the isolation of cancer very similar. And the reprioritization that people have done in their lives because of quarantine and being alone and reprioritizing everything is very similar to what cancer patients go through, because
Yeah.
when you get that wake up call that, hey, your time might be up, if you survive, you make changes. And I think 2020 has caused quite a few people to make major changes in their life. Hey, when they said quarantine, that was like, what's the big deal? I couldn't go out in public because my immune system was compromised and I couldn't be around people. And
Yeah.
you know, so the parallel. I think the show's more relevant now than it was when it first was thought about.
And how would you have known that? That's what I
Yeah.
like. How would you have known? You couldn't. It's not possible. It's really hard for us to surrender and just kind of let go, because we want to plan and be meticulous and we want to strive for excellence. And that's not a bad thing. I think that's there. We're driven. That's a good part of who we are. But just also being able to be like, there's some things, especially in the arts world, it's very spiritual in my mind. Some things happen and you just make it work. You just kind of go with the flow.
Well, you have to let go. When I was a corporate CEO, I'd have young managers, particularly, come in my office and they'd be stressed out and they'd say, "Oh, we have this
Right.
huge problem." And I'd always stop them. I'd say, "Is anybody dying?" And they said, "No." I said, "Well, then it probably isn't really a big problem. It's
Yeah.
probably something we can deal with, right?"
Yeah.
People tend to think that they have all this control, but you don't. You're not
But
getting out of
Keith, what a funny thing coming from you now, especially, right? Like, even when you were dying, you're like, you know what? Like, we're going to get through. Like, that's just funny. That's amazing.
Well, you're never going to, you realize at some point you're not getting out of this life alive, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You got to, it helps to put things in perspective.
Perspective and have a humor.
Well, I'm not going to claim I always acted that way, but
Yes.
I've tried to, certainly post cancer, very little gets to me anymore. Because
Right.
it's like, what's the big deal?
Yes. I really want your show to reach a lot of people. I think it's excellent. I love the metaphor of everything and the music too. Keith, honestly, I thought your playing was really good. The banjos are amazing. And I even love like this part of me of when you sort of talk about the closet and how I think there's so many people, for various reasons that there might be a reshuffle in 2020 that allows them in 2021 to go, you know what? Maybe it's a dumb hobby, but I'm going to do it. Like, why not? And what that can open up for people. I mean, for you, life-changing. For other people, could have that same impact. And like, whether it's a hobby or a dream or something that got shelved or even something they just have to work through, but they're actually going to face it now. I just think there's so much to be said about, going back to that closet and where things have been stored and kind of going, okay, let's do some like New Year's cleaning.
The nice thing about a Fringe Festival, you're in a town for 2 weeks. And during the 2 week run, I'll have people coming up to me in the second week saying, I went home and I have a guitar I hadn't played in years. I pulled it out. I'm going to do it again. Or I've had a number of guys come up to me, and they usually are guys who said, I thought I was too old to learn this stuff, but I'm younger than you, so I guess I can learn this stuff. And I point out, you don't have to be great. And I'm a pretty good master of deception. I play a bunch of stuff people don't know.
They can't compare you to. Okay, fair. Yeah.
If I mess it up, they have no idea that I messed it up. So I protected myself in that way by not playing a lot of really identifiable tunes.
Yeah, definitely. But still so good, still so fun to listen to, and I'm really encouraged by your show, you guys. I'm very grateful to have you on today and just be able to talk a little bit about the great classic lesson of surrender and letting go of control, because none of us have it. If no matter what our circumstances are, it seems to not be ours to hold on to, and maybe we are better off that way. But Erika, if people want to see it, how do they get to see the show?
Yeah, so right now it's playing online. They can see it for free, and they just need to go to online at thespaceuk.com. Okay. Online at thespaceuk.com. And it's you'll see it's Tomatoes Tried to Kill Me, but Banjo Saved My Life. Mm-hmm. You might have to shuffle through and search for the video, but or you can go to our website, which is www.tomatoestriedtokillme.com, and it's on the front page there. There's a link that goes directly to the show. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be up there until the 31st of January. So it's free, which we don't usually have online the whole show for free like that. Keith has done some virtual shows that have been just as you go, but this one's been sort of curated. We had a really good taping of it in Calgary of last year, so it's very fresh and new. It's a great one to see.
Thank you so much, you guys, for being on the show. And, everybody make sure, if you're listening in, to go check out their Instagram account and just follow up with the show. And Erika, maybe shout out your own Instagram too.
Oh, yes. My own Instagram is at YogaMonkey34. Okay. And I also have another business Instagram is at The Marvelous Messy Middle.
Okay, thanks so much, you guys. Have a great rest of your day. And yeah.
Thanks, Janessa.
Thanks.